All right, it's 9:30, so looks like everyone's connected with their audio. So just really quickly, I want to thank everyone for joining us today for our inaugural event. And today's session that's starting right now is Upskilling the Incumbent Manufacturing Workforce using online and hands-on training. Our speaker for this session is Stephen Palmatier. He's the president of Walking Ridge Development. And just a few quick housekeeping items. Keep yourself muted during the presentation. If you have a question, if you can hold it until the end of the session, that would be great. And you can also type it into the chat box if you can't wait until the end, if you think you're going to forget it. And if your question isn't addressed, we'll make sure that Steve follows up with you after the presentation. And the sessions will be recorded today. So if you missed something or want a copy of it, we'll be able to do that for you. And so, Steve, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Okay, can everyone hear me? I'm Steve Palmatier, lived in Norwich for, probably 40-some years now. And I ran a fairly large manufacturing facility down in Green, New York, primarily manufacturing metal parts for the aerospace industry. I sold that when I was in my mid-50s, tried to retire, and it didn't really work for me. I'm not that kind of person. So I started working on for the county as a consultant. One of my projects is workforce development. So here's the problem, right? A local or a regional manufacturer of products for the medical industry did an analysis of their pending retirements, and they found that their all of their machinists, tool makers, mold prep and setup people, industrial electricians, inspectors, and people who could repair machinery could retire within the next 7 years. They thought this is going to be simple. We'll just go out and we'll hire some people. And I think as Mr. Otto spoke about earlier, you just can't find those people on the street. So they would hire people, they'd last about 6 months, and they would go someplace else to work for another 50 cents or $1 an hour. The head of the personnel department looked at it and said, well, we'll just teach those people these skills. And what they didn't realize was that a tool maker, that's about a 7-year period of training. Somebody to repair robots, automated equipment, again, you've got a 5 to 7 year window to train them to the point where they're competent. And then finally, there was a complete lack of a teaching model for this. The company came to actually DCMO BOCES, asked them for help. And at the time, the head of the adult ed department knew of my background in manufacturing and came to me and said, you know, what would you do? So I looked at it, and you've got the company has employees. They had about 270 employees total. About 180 of them are on the shop floor, running injection molding machinery, doing what I consider to be fairly menial tasks. But what we know about those people is they show up for work every day. They get along with others, right? That they're basically good employees. They have those basic skills that make up a good workforce. So to me, the solution was to upskill the current workforce that they had. That meant I had to develop a teaching model that meets the need of the employer and the employees. And as Mr. Otto was talking, right, one of the things that struck me was you've got to take the employees' schedules into consideration when you're scheduling this. And one of the problems we have in these rural areas, right, is transportation. I found that I couldn't bring the employees to a central location for training like a school or a BOCES because, you know, if I brought them to DCMO, yeah, I have some people that live in New Berlin that are working there, and coming to the Norwich campus would work. But I've also got people all the way up in Worcester. The company was located in Oneonta. So I can't have those employees driving an hour and a half or a half an hour to work, and then another 40 minutes in the opposite direction from their home, taking a class and then going back to where they worked. And then finally, or where they lived. And then finally, I wanted to make sure that the content was stackable, that what I was really doing was providing people with the basic knowledge, right? So that they could enter any one or could take any one of the jobs that the company potentially was going to need to fill over the next 5 years. So to me, the nuts of this was you have to go in and you have to assess the skills that are required to do the tasks that constitute the jobs that needed to be filled. And I did this using a number of tools, right? I looked at the job descriptions that the company had already developed when they were recruiting. I talked to people that currently filled these positions at the facility. And I spent a couple of days actually on the shop floor, actually looking at what everybody was doing, how they interacted with one another, and the tools that they used, the equipment that they had. The second piece of it is you've got to assess the existing skills of the current employees. There are many ways to do this. The company had already developed, and it's a union shop, but they already had developed with the union aptitude tests. And I could utilize those to get some idea of the existing skills. We did a survey of the skills that the people would have doing the jobs that they were doing. We also did some testing around math because these jobs are all kind of the basic skills are all math centric, right? You've got to have some skills in shop mathematics, I call it. Again, defining the barriers to delivery. This plant runs 3 shifts, right? 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. How do you deliver content to the 3rd shift? In particular, that's difficult. The barrier of transportation is a problem. Internet access, because I chose to do this with a blended learning approach with some online courses. And then finally, creating employee buy-in. That was an interesting piece because when you talk about math, most shop level, production floor level people are terrified. And I actually wound up going to the facility before I started teaching and demonstrating corporate company-wide how I teach math, which is a very hands-on approach. Took measurement tools that are commonly used within the facility and actually demonstrated how math applied to using those measurement tools, things like sine bars, micrometers, verniers. So you need to do that employee buy-in. The company thought that they would get perhaps 7 or 8 people that would sign up for the program. Initially, they had 38 sign up. So I think we did a pretty good job of that. The bolts, right? Define the skills that are common to the jobs of concern. Things like reading a technical drawing, blueprints, schematics, assembly drawings. Those are all common to all of those jobs that I described in the beginning of the session. Define the base knowledge of the average course participant, right? That's that prior learning assessment. What we did find, though, is once we got teaching, that some of these employees had never put down on their resumes or even talked to their managers about skills that they already had. I had one employee who was just simply running an injection molding machine, and he actually had 1 year of electronic technical training from SUNY Broome, right? So here's somebody that was interested in that topic. He dropped out because of family issues, but he was interested in that subject. He had skills in that subject, and it's directly transferable to the industrial electrician jobs and the mechatronics job. We had to develop a delivery model, and I chose blended learning. I think that online takes the place of the lecture that you see in most courses. And then the hands-on piece is really, I think, important for retention. And then I had to demonstrate to management employees how the classes will be delivered. So our approach, blended learning, online learning supported by hands-on labs. In doing my assessment of the skill sets that were the skills that I needed to teach. I explored a number of online programs that were available. The National Tooling and Machining Association offers some. The Packaging Association offers some classes. And I finally settled on Tooling U from the Society of Manufacturing Engineers. I've been a member of the SME for probably 40 years. I do not have a degree in manufacturing engineering, but because of what I did, it was a logical group to join for me. And the thing I like about Tooling U was that there were a total of probably 500 online classes that I could utilize. And they cover all facets of manufacturing. I mean, from the basic math to the use of machine tools, how to select cutters, through, flow of polymers, things about plastic flow, which is a pretty esoteric discipline, lean manufacturing, theory of maintenance. So what I could do from using Tooling U was I could build the foundational courses to start. And then I knew that I could also use the same delivery method to build a program for more advanced training. And that's that stackable piece that I think is really, really important. The next piece was, how are you going to deliver this? And we chose to do it on site for a number of reasons, right? One is the transportation issue. Two is it allowed me to walk through the facility with my students and actually look. Every other week, we took a look at what we were learning, how it was applied on the shop floor or within the facility. Third, right, I'm trying to teach to all three shifts. I actually got up every Wednesday morning for 18 weeks. Got up at 4:30 in the morning, drove to Oneonta, and delivered to half of the first shift participants, and the third shift participants at 6:30. Started at 6:37 in the morning and went until 8:30, from 7 to 8:30. And then the company actually gave me an office, and I worked remotely at the things that I do from their facility. And then I taught more first shift people and second shift people from 2:30 to 4 o'clock. It's the only way I could see to deliver this to all of the participants. The company gave the employees an hour and a half each week to utilize to take the online courses, and that actually came in as part of the funding for us, because we used money from WDI, the Workforce Development Institute. And so that's a 50% match. So for every dollar that they spent on, paying their employees to take the online courses and to participate in my courses, that offset the match for WDI. And also the use of the facility itself. There's a square footage calculation you can do. So that worked out really well, delivering it on site. The other thing we decided was that management should participate in the classes. The head of facilities for the company sat in on most of the programs that I did, or most of the classes that I taught, and so did the head of the personnel department. We found that to be really an interesting way to do this, because particularly with people in personnel, they often don't really completely understand what the people on the shop floor face every day. It also allowed us to have discussions about how people impacted one another in their work. And the head of the personnel department, or actually not the head of the personnel department, facilities management, who was recently retired, felt that this was probably one of the most important things he had done in a 40-year career with a Fortune 500 company. We focused strictly on subject matters and how it was used in the facility. And I think this is something that's, again, very nice about Tooling U and very important. I would not go into, well, we're actually talking with Unison about using a similar project or a similar style of delivery for them for a mechatronics or machine repair apprenticeship program. And again, I will not teach at Unison. I would not think about teaching flow of polymers because that's not what they do. But I may focus on soldering or something like that, something that's more pertinent to what goes on within that facility. So, you know, you focus directly on what the people, the skills that people actually need and the skills that the company needs. And then the other thing we did was we blend outside instructors with experts in the facility. In the case of this manufacturing, or Trades 101, as the company called it, I was the outside instructor. But again, flow of polymers is not my field of expertise. And I actually used someone who managed that portion of the plant to deliver content. He was very good at that and taught me a whole lot of things. So, you know, that was the approach we took. Now to give you some examples of how what the outcomes looked like. This was with the first group that I took. All of the Tooling U modules, there's actually a pre-test that you must take. And while you're taking the modules, there are 2 or 3 quizzes you need to take before you can move on. And then finally, there's a final test as the administrator, the head of the facilities, there could actually give people the number of chances they had to take the final test. We chose to give that as a pre-test and then give them 2 chances on the final. If you look at this, right, you can see our outcomes, fractions and decimals. We went from an average pre-test at 55% to an average final at 89. Surface texture and inspection, kind of another esoteric field or esoteric piece of knowledge. Surface texture and inspection, 57 to 95. Now, what I will say about this is it can be skewed a little bit because some of the participants in the class actually said, you know what, we're not going to bother to really spend any time on that pre-test because we know we don't know a whole lot, or I already know this stuff, so I'm just going to wait and take the final and not waste my time. And that's fine, but it does it can skew this outcome. But I still think that, it shows a tremendous amount of learning here. And really what we're trying to teach with this blended learning model, right, is the Tooling U modules. That teaches really the why, right? And then the hands-on teaches the how. And this is something I find with most apprenticeship programs, right? You take an apprenticeship program, or you're an apprentice, and very often you're learning from somebody who has skills in the trade. Actually, that's a requirement of the apprenticeship programs. So you're learning the how, but you're really not always learning the why. And often what you're learning also is you're not learning the most modern theory. Tooling U, the modules are often are created by industry. So, when I get into things like lubricants, you're going to see that, some of that was created by ExxonMobil or Chevron, the people who actually make those products. So, it's the most up-to-date learning that I can give someone. Finally, and then the unexpected. The company thought that what we were going to do was actually teach some fundamentals about, right, the skills that they needed to do the jobs they needed to fill. But what we found was that the employees came out with a better understanding. Well, the management came out with a better understanding of the tasks employees performed in their jobs. That helped to build better job descriptions for hiring in the future. And it also allowed us to fine-tune the training program so that we can take this back, again in 5 years if we need to. There were often some very open discussions about issues in the facility that impacted production. bottlenecks, how the lack of maintenance on a particular machine impacted things. Actually, we looked at one point, there was a mold where somebody had actually dropped a part and changing a mold out. They dropped a part on the bed of the machine and it damaged that part. The plastic parts that they use have to be optically clear. So the damage to the mold required some very expensive repair. And the employees brainstormed a way to prevent that from happening again. And we actually built some padded tooling so that when molds got switched in and out, we didn't have that kind of damage anymore. The other thing we discussed at depth, at length among the employees was air leaks. And most people don't realize it, but in most production facilities, about 15% of the energy can come from, or wasted energy comes from air leaks. And we actually put a whole program in place to monitor those and repair those as soon as they occurred. Again, saving the company a ton of money. The employees throughout the plant wound up with a greater employee cooperation and communication as they understood how they impacted each other's jobs. That was, I think, another one of the outcomes that the company did not expect, and yet it had a huge amount of value. So, you know, again, I think it came from the open communication between management, employees during the classes. I also think that the employees saw themselves as being important because the company was investing in them. And that's that piece, increased job satisfaction. Employees saw management investing in them and saw the potential to move into higher skilled positions. And I think that, you know, in our discussions, we should always keep an eye on that. People want to know how they can move up. The company, as I said before, they thought they might have 8 people, 10 people apply for this. I finished teaching this program, and the employees immediately came back with another cohort that wanted the courses presented again. So I did this all over, and had another 14 employees start and graduated 10 in that group. I think something else that was interesting was that I had, in the second group, I had 14 students, 9 of them were women. And this is a field that is not usually one that women are found in, especially at the higher levels. And I'm not going to try to explain that, but I thought it was very interesting that I had many more women than I had men participating in the second program. Upon completion of that, the management came back to me and requested a more in-depth program targeting the field of mechatronics. Something that happened during this period of time also, I had done the first program for BOCES. BOCES decided to drop the program itself. I taught the second cohort myself as a consultant. While I was doing that, SUNY Morrisville, the new provost there, Barry Sprague, had run a similar program at Lehigh Valley Community College. And he actually asked Jason Ziebach, the associate provost, I guess, at SUNY Morrisville, if he knew anyone who could do this. And Jason knew what I was doing. And this then got picked up by SUNY Morrisville. And what we've done is we actually brought in a more in-depth program on mechatronics, and that was taught by Mehmet Bezel. He's a professor of mechanical engineering at SUNY Morrisville. So it's allowed me to have people with much more expertise in fields that I'm not knowledgeable in actually come in and teach. We completed that, and the management of the company, the management of the facility has come back to us, and they've asked us for a 2-year program to support a toolmaker's apprenticeship program. Again, teach the why, not just the how. And this will be a 145-hour-a-year program for 2 years. Again, I think this one we're going to teach blended, partially at the facility, partially at SUNY Morrisville, where we have some CNC machinery, some things like that that we would want to use. But this will meet the state requirements that any apprenticeship program have 145 hours of classroom instruction. So, so again, I think that demonstrates how successful this can actually be. Other programs we've run based on this model, we ran a manufacturing boot camp for unemployed, underemployed individuals. That was requested by the Department of Labor. And we were able to take 12 people, again, unemployed, underemployed. And we actually delivered this at SUNY Morrisville in Norwich. We have portable labs that we can use for this. And we taught things like, again, how to use dimensional measurement tools, how to use multimeters to measure electricity, electrical troubleshooting, things like mechanical drive systems, right? Gear trains and things like that, hydraulics and pneumatics. And the thing we found with that I found was, I actually had a professor from Morrisville teaching, and I was doing the support. Again, math heavy at the first. The participants were afraid of that math. Once you got them through that, it was like they lit up. Oh my God, I can actually do this. I can do this. I really can't wait to get started on the nuts and bolts of how the mechanical systems work and the electrical systems work. And we had the same kind of outcomes on our test scores. We also placed 95. We held a job fair after running the two programs. We actually placed 95% of the students in the first cohort, and we followed up 6 months later, and 85% of them were still employed in the jobs that they took. I think that's, again, a real statement. We have run some online programs on geometric dimensioning and tolerancing. This is a topic probably most of you don't know, but it's a different way of drawing a blueprint and tolerancing a blueprint. Companies are moving towards this. A lot of engineers don't even understand how this really works. So we have done that for Briggs and Stratton, who make the lawnmowers up in Sherrill, New York, and we've done it for a couple of employers down in the Binghamton area. So we can customize this for any company, for anything that they're doing, for any skill set that they need taught, or people to be upskilled in. The 2-year mechatronics program that's being developed for Unison. Again, it's a matter of helping the company develop the employees that they need. Secondly, I've had a lot of discussions with management there, and they know that their employees are clamoring for this kind of support, this kind of help in forwarding their careers. And I've also developed a program for electricians helpers, 2-week. Again, it'll probably be delivered at SUNY Morrisville when COVID is over. But we're going to teach, all of the things that would go into working as a helper to an electrician. Again, leading into mechatronics, machine repair, facilities, support at a manufacturing facility, or actually any kind of facility. Right? I see Ann English is on here. That's a big piece of what your maintenance people do at the hospital. I was going to slide in a sample course content. Anyone wants to email me, I'll send that to you. That's my fault. The future, we can develop more courses to address regional needs, new methods of delivery. One of the things that I'm looking at, and I'm going to ask any of you manufacturers out there who can help me with this, we're looking at Unadilla Valley to develop an SME Prime program for kids in high school to teach them manufacturing skills. I've raised $75,000 of the $150,000 I need from the Corning Foundation. But one of the advantages that would give me If I'm at the Unadilla Valley School, there's a model out of Pine Bush down by Middletown, New York, where they're actually teaching these skills both to high school students, and after high school lets out, they're teaching them to the incumbent workforce, to people in the region who are adults. And it would give me the equipment to do that. Again, I think that addresses the issue of transportation, right? I think I have someone on this from Golden Artists. Hard to send your employees to, over to the BOCES facility, to Norwich, right, to the Morrisville campus. If I'm delivering this kind of content within 10 miles of your facility, it's a lot easier. Again, move this into the high schools. Even if I don't do the SME Prime program, I will probably be building some curriculum for high schools around here to teach the skills of manufacturing. UV is one that I've worked with before, I have been working with. I'm actually teaching a machining program over there. And then SUNY Morrisville and I want to move beyond manufacturing. They already have some programming around using the Microsoft Office suite. They have programs around healthcare that was developed actually for Bassett and has been delivered over there. So we'd like to develop more of these, around other skill sets that are needed in the region. And then finally, we want to look at issuing micro-credentials for taking these courses, possibly leading to college credit. The Manufacturing 101, Trades 101 course I taught, or the Manufacturing Boot Camp we taught, in talking with SUNY Morrisville engineering professors, in talking with the professors, we're putting together a mechatronics program at SUNY Broome, and I was part of the group that put together the DACM committee for that. In talking with those professors, if somebody came out of high school or an adult came out of, out of one of these classes, of these courses that I teach, they would like to issue them 1 or 2 college credits for that. The second thing that we like about the micro-credentials, or I like about micro-credentials, is if they're carried by the employee, it lets you, the employer, see what skills your employees have, right, that you didn't know about, right? And running a manufacturing plant, I found that very often I hired people to do a job, and they did it very well, but I didn't realize that they also had other skills that I could use in other places within my facility. So the SUNY system has a white paper out on this, what micro-credentials should look like. I know that Corning Community College is actually starting to issue micro-credentials. SUNY Binghamton actually has a micro-credential sitting on Credly for lean for healthcare. And I think that they're developing one around the basics of HIPAA. So, I think that micro-credentials are going to be very important. They can be developed either by SUNY, by industry, or by a given company. So, keep an eye on that. It's something I know a bit about. I'm not going to tell anyone I'm an expert in it. I'd like to gain more expertise in that. But I think it's an important piece of the future of learning and job development. So I know I had an hour to do this, but I'd like to open it up for discussion. And then I have a final slide with resources, and I believe these slides will all be up and available to you guys on the Commerce Chenango website. I'm willing to share any of it. So any discussions, questions for me? This is a very quiet group.
Steve, I have a question.
Yes.
So I know with the group that you use primarily as your example, you talked about the pre-test specifically around math topics that you gave. And as you said, several of them opted to not try or not take it. But I was wondering, how would you go about assessing the current skills of a group outside of, a math test? I know there's more beyond just the math that manufacturing employees.
Right. The math test, that's a different discussion. The thing that the students didn't always try on was the pre-test for each of the Tooling U modules. The math test was actually developed by Jason Ziebach. He, his college, his degree was actually in advanced mathematics. And we provided that test. We did that test so that if you passed it, you didn't have to take the prerequisite math courses that we put into these programs that I ran. Assessing other skills. There's actually a group called CALE, the Council on Adult and Experiential Learning, and they have a lot of material on doing prior learning assessments. So at Corning, right, I shouldn't have used the word Corning because that was a company I was working with. With them, they and their union had already developed a number of assessments, aptitude tests, right? So that let me see some things, right? Some things about what people knew. There are ways to develop these PLAs to look at what prior skills people have learned. And, those skills are learned a lot of different ways. Way back when Procter & Gamble was in Norwich, my sister actually wound up being head of international regulatory for them when they moved to Cincinnati. But they would do things like share their employees. They allowed her to, or directed her actually, to work for the United Way and serve on the finance committee, because her background, right, was science, and the finance was not her background. So they shared her with the United Way so that she would get a little bit more knowledge of that. And again, you can ask people, right? What have you done? Asking when I was teaching at Corning, the gentleman who had taken the 1-year program at SUNY Broome in electrical, he when I'm teaching the electrical side, he's jumping in and mentoring other people in the class, right? Helping people that didn't have any background in it, who needed support. And again, you've got to kind of analyze that as you go along as an employer. I think that again, it's just a powerful, powerful thing to do. Something else that I really think was important over there, I had a woman, when we were doing the inspection piece, she said, I gave her a very simple part to check. And the way I do that is I took a blueprint, took the dimensions off them, and gave the people a part and said, fill the dimensions in. What does the part actually measure? Left the tolerance on and said, put the tool you use down so I know that you use the proper tool based on the accuracy that we need. The woman took the first part. I think it had 6 dimensions. She tried to inspect it. She couldn't do it. She said, I hate this. I'm not going to do this anymore. And I sat down with her after the class, after everyone else left. I walked her through how to do it. The next week, we gave her a very complex part, 30-some dimensions, compound angles and things. She's got it for 30 minutes. She stands there and stands up. She goes, I've got this. And then she looks and she says, how do I become the head of the inspection department? So we actually sat down. I sat down with the management, right, the head of personnel. I sat down with the head of facilities, and we actually drew a fishbone diagram. There are 4 levels of inspector at the facility, and we drew a fishbone diagram of each level, what the skills were that you needed to do that job at each level, and then underneath it, we drew where she could get that knowledge, right, if she didn't have it. What we found was in some of the areas, she already had the skills. She was a good communicator. She had actually taken some college English courses, so she wrote very well, right? She was good at communication. She could write very well. Things she lacked, skill sets in Excel. Corning, actually, the company itself has online training in how to obtain the skills in the Microsoft Office suite and in Excel. Right, there are some other things, right? The SUNY Oneonta actually has a psychology course for managers, right, that they run every couple of years. She could go take that, right, and the company would pay for it. So again, you know, these are other things that I think that come out of this. You know, that drawing of your career pathway is what I'm going to call it. Again, this is something that Kale concentrates on, but drawing that career pathway for people, how to move up in their job, right? The skill sets that you need to do that, and then where you can acquire those. It's almost like a gap analysis, I guess, that we were doing. But I thought that was a very interesting, another one of the very interesting outcomes to the program that I ran over there.
Thanks.
Okay, either I've done this really well, or I've done it really poorly, or I'd have more questions.
Does anyone have any questions, any thoughts they'd want to share with Steve before we get about 19 minutes left? I don't want to rush anyone away.
And finally, I've got a page up now of, you know, resources, how to contact me, SUNY Morrisville. Obviously, they're running the program with me. The Society of Manufacturing Engineers, the Tooling U program. Again, they'll cover anything. They'll cover food production. They cover pharma production. You know, all of the metal manufacturing sides. If you're interested in, you know, the badging and micro-credentials, you can look at Credly. That seems to be the favorite spot for the SUNY programs to sit. It's Credly that's got the Lean for the healthcare, badge. Credential Engine is another one. And most of these places have literally hundreds of online courses that lead to these badges. LRNG, we have actually got a grant. We're using that in a number of school districts around here. It's a kind of a pretty dynamic site. And then I really like CALE, the Council on Adult and Experiential Learning, for this career pathway piece of this work that I do, and for the prior learning assessments. That's all I have. Feel free to contact me.
Excellent.
And think about, if you're a manufacturer, think about supporting the SME Prime program over at Unadilla Valley.
Excellent. Well, if there's no other questions, thank you so much for joining us today, Steve, and everyone on this call. There's a few minutes before the next breakout sessions. I'll stick around here for just a couple minutes in case anyone has any other questions or needs information. But other than that, feel free to go use the restroom, grab a cup of coffee or a snack, and hopefully we'll see you in the next breakout sessions. And Steve, thank you again so much for all of this information. I took a bunch of notes, and we'll be knocking on your door probably early next week.
Well, I'm not going anyplace.
Excellent. Thanks, guys. Steve, I was going to say, when I was working at Hartwick, when we were redesigning the educational outcome goals for the undergraduates, we talked a lot about badging and how important it's becoming just in every field for students to have all these different types of badges that they can include on their resume. So it's interesting that it's just become so pervasive in all job fields.
I'm seeing companies, Lockheed Martin and IBM. I have contacts there. Have worked with them, you know, back when I ran my machine shop. But they're both using these badges and micro credentials now to track their employees' knowledge base And what it allows them to do is actually put together teams when a problem comes up.
Oh.
Right? Think about that, right?
Yeah.
So, and I used to work, I mean, those companies, BAE Systems, GE Aerospace, Lockheed Martin, they actually used to fly me around the country, often when new projects were starting up or where big problems developed, right? And I was usually the only outside person there, right? Everybody else was always from corporate. But they would bring me in, and part of why they did that was because I could look at all the people sitting in the room and say to them, figure out what their skills were and help them build the team that they needed. Who do you need to bring in? What's the gap that you have to actually get the project finished? And now what we do is we use these badges and micro-credentials to track that, right? There's things I don't do well at all, right? Honestly, most technology to me is, I don't use it as well as I should. And I need somebody on my team who does that, right? I'm really good. And when I say I don't use technology, you can put a 5-axis CNC machine tool in front of me that costs $1 million. And I can tell you exactly how to set that program up. I can tell you exactly what that machine tool needs to do. But, other facets of that it just isn't what interests me. So what you need to do is, right, everything I do, I need to build a team that can do those things. SUNY Morrisville right now, they're not badges, but I have a list of the expertise of all their engineering professors. So when somebody calls me and says, I need somebody to teach GD&T, I know who that is. Right?
Awesome.
And that's, I think that you're going to see companies going more and more to this. I also think that you're going to see, the necessity of a college degree kind of decline.
Yeah.
There's another piece of it that I see, and that is back when they were drilling gas wells around here, right? I probably took 150 hours of programming at Penn State. That programming was delivered and gave you continuing education credits if you were an attorney. They gave you continuing education credits if you were a geologist, right? They gave you continuing education credits in a couple of other fields, right?
Mm-hmm.
I walked out of it after 150 hours, and I have no way to demonstrate, because I didn't have any of those degrees, right? I have no way to demonstrate what I learned, right? And yet it was very high level. I mean, I actually have lectured the Bar Association of several chapters of the Bar Association in New York State on compulsory integration law. I have an attorney who is an expert in that, who will tell you I'm one of 5 people in New York State that actually understands compulsory integration law. And I actually took the DEC, town of Preston, we took the DEC to court. And the DEC said, that's not what that law means. I don't care what the law you think the law means. I care about what the law says, right? And we won.
We won. My brother.
Pardon?
Oh, Joe.
Yeah, hi, I'm Joe. Hi, Steve.
Hi.
I just wanted to jump in and say what a great session that was, and I kind of hope what I'm going to do dovetails, but I think one of the key points you hit that we all need to get realizing is, we all hear about the changing workforce, but this kind of credentialing and continuing education, right? I mean, those of us who have done things with CALE or NACE or whatever, the lifelong learning expectation the employees are now bringing to the workplace is staggering, and I'm not sure people are ready. Employers are ready for it. It's amazing to me. I've been in my job for 25 years at my current employer, my main employer. And we went from having to ask for things to now we hire somebody, they come in and say, well, when's my first training class? I would like to learn X, Y, Z. And so you're ahead of the curve, and I think your session really nailed it. And I kind of hope to flow into it, but I just wanted to say that, that's something that, typically too, I think what you have brought to the table with some of this, with these major corporations, typically some of the work I do, and I do some contracting for a company out of Manhattan, and you can't find the kind of things you're talking about, and I think I'm going to be talking about, unless you're in a major metropolitan area. So I think, you know, in terms of rural markets, I think we have a distinct advantage around here to have some of this already in place. And like what UV's doing, what Oxford does, it's ahead of the ballgame. So I just wanted to throw you a kudo. And also Jason Zabak used to work for us, and the guy is just on another plane. He's just amazing.
When they were interviewing for that position in Norwich, I walked into the room and they said, "Who are you?" And I said, "I'm Steve Palmatier." They said, "Why are you here?" And I said, "It's important to me that we have somebody who's dynamic running this campus," right? I think we had 12 or 13 people apply. I think we interviewed 6 of them. And there was actually some pushback on Jason because he was just so enthusiastic, right? I mean, I'm wound up. I mean, I am really wound up most of the time. Jason's way beyond me, different plane. Yeah. And I finally looked at the people who were a little concerned, and I said, you know, I spent 40 years of my life breeding and training horses. And I said, if I'm going to get on a horse, I want to get on a horse that I have to kind of hold the reins rather than one that I have to beat with a stick to move forward. And I think that's Jason to me.
Yeah, no, he's a poster child for overcaffeination, and I don't even think he drinks coffee anymore. He was really a dynamo at Broome. It was a pleasure to work for him, and I think losing him to Morrisville probably cost us some market share in terms of continuing education north of Chenango, Forks, or Green. But you know, at the end of the day, it's I'm from Norwich originally. I think I'm going to end up back there the next year or so. It's definitely, it's all good. But I wanted to thank you for the session. I'm going to jump out because I have one at 10:30 that I'm, you know, making sure I have even a remote clue to do this thing. It's only been a year on Zoom. It's only been a year. Sorry.
You're in good hands. Don't worry. You've got a good team going to take care of it.
Yeah, I feel like that's good. So thanks for your time, and thanks, Steve. That was a great session. And we still need to get together for that coffee.
Yeah, looking forward to working with you. I mean, again, you know, I've got another 5-6 years in me before I want to retire, and I love this kind of work because I think it does so much for the people, right? Yeah. It does so much for the companies, and the method of delivery, right? Where we can deliver this stuff to rural communities, which you can't have a central location. You got to have this thing out there.
Yep.
All kinds of different delivery models.
You're preaching to the choir. We're definitely walking down the same path. So I do look forward to some of that, you know, cross-pollination. And but I'm going to jump because I want to make sure you know, because now I listen to you and I'm second guessing probably about 2/3 of what I'm going to talk about. Like, damn, like, but it'll be fine.
Don't. It's good.
All right.
It'll be good. You,
Thanks.
Bye-bye. Thanks, Joe.
Bye. Thank you.
All right. Steve, I'm going to end this. I'll be around. You'll see me. Thanks for doing this.
All right. Thanks.
All right. Bye.
Bye.